DEVLOG. Alright, here's what we got that's new. Join the game. Walls, wizard, door and wall, wizard and door, battering ram, grass thing, new trees. Let me know if you like the change. A fantastic bunch of new things. As I said in the last devlog, if you haven't seen it, check it out. I really wanted to add walls. I just hadn't thought of a way of doing it or interacting with it. I know the trees are different, and there's water. I'll bring it up later. Trust me. I already had a system in place for connecting walls between towers, so it was easy to expand on that rather than rebuilding everything from the ground up. And there's two ways that I have for placing walls, one of which is the only one I currently use. First one that I went with was the classic approach of placing down small sections of a wall in a line to make up a whole wall. Basically, I just take the distance between the towers and segment it up in a way that's specific to the wall segment. So it looks nice and pretty. This way's good for wooden stick walls, but as I crept into the castle walls, the uneven terrain made it so it didn't look very bueno. And then I was like, hey, let's make a better wall placement system to fix this problem. So I made this, which makes a big block between the two walls, and it didn't fix anything and was a waste of time. Fucking stupid. Fucking shit. Another problem I ran into when making the walls is the pathfinding to go around it. This was actually really easily solved with a nice little component called the nav mesh obstacle. I can just check this box and it cuts a nice little section out of the navigation surface. So if this lad is trying to get to the place I tell him to go, he just gets cut off, and I can keep cutting him off. Freaky idiot. So I just add the boxes with the nav mesh obstacle to the wall segments, and bada boom bada bang, it works. I also replaced the stone towers that I had before because these stone towers look better with the walls that I decided to go with. As for the doors, I needed a way of interacting with the wall. This needs some explanation for how the buildings work in the game. The way the buildings work is that when they are placed, they store themselves in a static list of buildings held for each player. And when I'm walking around in the world, it loops through that list and detects which building is the closest to me. That way I can get the distance by subtracting my position from the position of the building. This gives me a vector pointing in the direction of the building. I can then choose between either magnitude or square magnitude to get the length of the vector. This is because the distance formula has this big old line in it that takes the square root and gives you the correct distance. So magnitude is the actual length of the vector, and square magnitude doesn't have this line in it and returns the squared result. The obvious pick for getting the correct distance here is magnitude, but contraire, I actually use square magnitude because computers apparently have a harder time computing square roots than they do with simple multiplication. So, in an if statement, instead of saying if the distance between the player and the building is less than the desired radius, I say if the square distance between the player and the building is less than the desired radius times the desired radius. I just square the radius. It's not very complicated, and it saves a bit of computing power. And then, if I'm in range of this interaction radius, which for most of the buildings is 2, I have it play a little interesting hover effect. So when I click the build button, I am now interacting with the building I'm standing on, denoted with the name hovering building. So what I did with the walls is, for each segment that I place down, it's basically a building. So when I get close to the segment, or in the player's mind, the wall, I can just interact with it and open a menu. When I place them, I tie them together with this wall script, which basically just has some pointers to which towers it's connected to, and whether or not there's a door already placed there. So I don't, place 2 doors or connect it to the same tower already. Stuff like that. Pause. If you're a wall gamer, consider liking and subscribing, or disliking and unsubscribing. That option is also available to you, I guess. The first devlog, I got a lot of positive reactions, and pretty cool ideas from the comments, so I really appreciate that. Thank you. Everyone who was interested in the game. That was kind of the first bit of game dev content that I've really ever posted, so it means a lot. Appreciate it. Also, a couple people requested that I make a Discord. That's in the description for you now, folks. Unpause. The doors were a bit tricky because in my mind I wanted the opening to be in the middle of the wall. Luckily, that's exactly where I start the placement of the walls when I build it, so technically I can just remove the first child of the wall, the middle wall section here, and replace it with a door. Easy peasy. But it got me thinking, what if I wanted a door to be bigger and all my wall sections are tiny? Then if I replace the middle wall section, I would need a small door and I would need to replace more, and then would it always line up properly with the door? So I decided not to go with this technique of removing just the middle wall. Instead, I just have my door prefab and through 2 tower scripts on the sides of the door. So Now I replaced the whole wall with the door in the middle, and then build 2 new walls off of those fake towers that I attached to the door. I wrap it all up in the same parent for the initial wall, and then mark it as has door. Now there's a section of the wall replaced with the door, and I don't need to stay within any constraints of how big the door needs to be. I can make it however large or small I want, as long as it's still a functioning door. And with that process completed, I now have the walls that block the player due to nav mesh obstacle and can be interacted with due to the building script. Pretty neat. For the wooden walls, I didn't want a door, I just wanted a space, so I didn't really have to worry about much there. But for the stone walls, I knew that I wanted something over the top, like a gate or some type of grand entrance. Initially, I went with this door because it matches the style of the walls and fits in nice and cozy. But after a bit of testing, I realized that if you place your wall vertically, it's kind of hard to tell where the door is. I know it's in the middle, you know, because that's where the door is placed every single time. But I wanted to make it a bit more obvious than that. So I went with this door instead. I think it still matches the style, and it's a bit more grand. Well, a lot more grand. But now, as the player, I won't get lost as to where I can enter and exit my castle. I know that with a quick glance, the giant castle gate that you're literally never going to be able to hide is where I can get through. I also haven't added in any closability for the door, gate, whatever you want to call it. I think I want to, but I'm just sitting on the idea before I add it in. I don't really know. And if I did, it would probably just be the stone gates, because the wooden ones, you know, I don't care. They can just stay hanging wide open. Whatever. As for the unit interaction with the walls, initially I decided that I wanted the units to be able to attack the wooden walls only and not the stone ones. I've since changed my mind and said no, they cannot attack any walls, because that way they would automatically target the walls, and I had no say in if they should actually target the walls or the people, you know, like choosing which one. I know there's a way to get around this. I can just assign weights to the target, and so if, you know, maybe there's like a small distance where the unit is a little bit further away, but because the unit has a higher weight, it would target the unit instead. But I know that I want to add siege units in, so why not let them just do that? And if you want to take down walls, shame on you. Someone built a beautiful castle, but just use battering rams or something. Trees and water. Told you I'd come back on this one. I found some new trees. I think they look pretty cool. So I threw those in there. There were a couple bugs we had to work through, but nothing too bad. And then I did the same thing with the water and added some post-processing cloud shadows. If you think the old trees are cooler, let me know. I'm still not certain that these ones really fit with the game style. I do like how there's a big mesh of canopy that blocks off the ground with these trees, rather than the singular, very stick-like trees from before. Best preference, I guess. Let me know. Let me know what you think. Now let's get to some more cool shit. Mages and battering rams. I made the buildings for both these locked behind research, so they won't really be early game units. It'll take some time. This is what the mages look like. And for the attack, I didn't want to make it a projectile, because I felt like I was just making another upgraded archer. So I went with this fire ring. It does area damage and lights all the units around them on fire. I think it's a cool change and might bring some diverse gameplay into the mix, as before it was basically just melee or ranged, and you could choose between the upgraded version of both of those. And then I also have battering rams. This, along with the mage, is still from the RTS Unity pack that I mentioned in the last video. Great pack, tons of content, not sponsored, but for the battering rams, I made it so they don't attack units. They can only attack buildings or walls, but they're very good at it. See, look at them go. They got the spirit. Nah, they attack exactly how you'd expect. That bug was just because all the units have the same attacking script for buildings, so it would just run up to it and throw torches. I just added this checkbox for units to use their normal attack on buildings if I wanted them to. So theoretically, I could make archers and swordsmen use their normal attacks, but that's not what I want to do, so I just use it for the battering ram. And I'm probably going to end up using it for like the catapult and shit. I also made the battering rams super slow and really heavily armored, so they're hard to kill, but if you have enough people, they'll go down pretty easy. They just roll up on you and hit you a few times till you're dead. Another thing that I forgot to talk about last devlog is how I handle the stats for units and buildings. In the past, when I made Birds and Blades, my other RTS game, go check it out if you feel like it, it's kind of buggy. Testing was kind of troublesome because let's say we found found out the swordsmen were too overpowered and had too much health. In order to fix that, I would have to load up Unity, change some values, and then make another build for the game. Test it out, see if I like it again, check the value, be like, okay, this is cool. But if it's wrong, do the exact same thing. This is super time consuming and takes away from the game being played. But for this game, I instead went with an online database approach. So at the start of each game, I connect to a database, which is Firebase at the moment, and get all the values that I need, like health, damage, range, cost, basically whatever I want to put in there. So if I build up the game, and in one game I'm like, damn, these archers are shooting their shots way too fucking far. We gotta tone that down. I can basically just edit the values from my phone, because it's a website, and next game those values will be updated. Super good for testing and iterating on the existing build of the game. This also works for everyone else playing the game, so if the majority of users agree, like if I get a bunch of emails or something, that shieldmen have too much armor and they don't die too easy. Without updating the game, I can change that value, and it will update for everyone who's playing the game. My only problem with this is that it takes some time to load in the beginning of the game, and load screens are bad. So maybe I should just make it at the start of the game, but I'm not sure people care that much either. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Maybe I'll disable it for the release builds and only use it for testing. Who knows? I don't know. I also added a new grass texture as well. I thought it might change up the very flat looking environment. I don't know if it looks too splotchy or not enough like grass. Tell me what you think. It's the first iteration. And lastly, I added the ability to join the game and leave the game. I had to change up the look of the UI because, let's say when player 2 joined first, the box that they normally had in the corner would be in the wrong corner. And I didn't like that. And I know I can change it based on which player joins first, but I just wanted to go with more of a universal UI. It seemed cooler to me. So I just made all the positions for the resources and stuff the same. And that's all of it for now. If you like it, dislike it, subscribe if subscribe. Peace.